weather, traffic, and news updates online at 560theanswer.com. Now, from the Signature Bank Studios. If you're looking for the latest news, insight into what it means, and the sharpest opinion, there's only one station in Chicago where you can turn, and it's this one. We're AM 560, The Answer.
Top of the morning, Dan Proft here. So Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent was making the rounds on the Sunday talkies to preview this week's meeting between President Trump and dictator Xi. They're meeting in South Korea to talk trade. And Bessent suggests that through his level of communication with the Chinese communists, there's been a cooling off from some of the heat generated over export controls on rare earths and the threats to retaliate accordingly. He had this to say on Meet the Press, previewing Thursday's sit-down.
President Trump gave me a great deal of negotiating leverage with the threat of the 100% tariffs on November 1st, and I believe we've reached a very substantial framework that will avoid that and allow us to discuss many other things with the Chinese. I think we will be able to discuss them helping us get this terrible fentanyl crisis under control. I think we are going to be able to discuss substantial soybean and ag purchases for our American farmers. I think we are going to be able to discuss more balanced trade. And I'm not going to get ahead of the two leaders, but I think that they will also be discussing President Trump's global peace plan that he's been so successful at, both here in Asia, the Middle East, and now he's looking to Ukraine, Russia.
Yeah, I think that's all, very much keeping up appearances type rhetoric, but I think it belies the reality. I don't think you're going to see President Trump coming out of the meeting with Xi doing the Trump dance like he was per his reception in Malaysia over the weekend. Don't think so. By the way, why does Scott Bessent always look like he's looking directly into the sun when he's just sort of, I don't know, it just sort of hit me over the weekend. Anyway, Bessent on Face the Nation also suggesting that a deal, including the details of a deal to allow TikTok to operate in the United States under, one would assume, non-Chi-Com ownership. Maybe Kevin O'Leary is about to step in. Those details have been agreed upon.
We reached a final deal on TikTok. We'd reached one in Madrid, and I believe that as of today, all the details are ironed out, and that will be for the two leaders to consummate that transaction on Thursday in Korea.
Two heads of state consummating a private sector transaction about over a social media company. If you have a bit of a queasy feeling about that, like me, then your instincts are good. For more on all of this, including 3% inflation in perpetuity, Scott the Cow Guy Shellady joins us. There it is. Market specialist for Market Day Report, 10:30 to 1 p.m. Also the host of the Cow Guy Close, 1 to 1:30, both at RFD-TV. Scott, thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
Good morning.
Are you excited for the Trump-Xi sit-down on Thursday?
I'm not as excited as the market is, and I'm not as excited as Mr. Bessent is. I tend to judge the Chinese by their actions, not by their words. And for the last 10 to 15 years, they've been investing billions of dollars in South America to move their soybean purchases out of the U.S. to South America, and they've done so already. And they've got massive ports, massive infrastructure. They're going to purchase their soybeans from South America. If they purchase any beans from the U.S., it's because they have to, or there's been some sort of problem with the production in South America. Now, there may be some ceremonial purchases that comes out of this deal, but you have to remind yourselves that we had 3 Chinese nationals get caught coming into this country this summer with biohazards that were there to kill our wheat and corn crops. That's something that I think is terribly offensive. And then on top of that, the last time we got together face-to-face with them, I don't know, 6-7 weeks ago, Maybe it was Geneva. I'm not quite sure. But while we were there face to face, they pulled their sorghum business from the U.S. and moved it all to South America. So I don't believe a word these people say. It'll be nice to see some agreement. I guess the market thinks it's going to be great. But I think the proof is in the pudding. And I don't want to be a Debbie Downer. I'm glad that there's a framework, a quote-unquote framework. That doesn't mean, like you said, they're going to agree on anything. But they don't have America's best interest in mind. They treat us like an enemy, and we try to treat them like they're going to be our friends. And it's frustrating to me.
Yeah, I mean, now, with respect to South America, our new friends in Argentina, Milei and his party, which saw success in yesterday's elections, that could put a crimp in China's purchases of those ag products from South America, because Argentina was one of those target markets, wasn't it?
Yeah, and Argentina just dropped tariffs on a lot of their exports and let China fill up basically all their needs up until January in about 2 or 3 days of purchases of 40 or 45, cargo loads. So,
well, I know, but I mean, just in terms of looking ahead, I mean, that's certainly not going unbeknownst to Besant and Trump. And so at some point, if they want this $20 billion liquidity swap, then, you're going to have to play ball with us with China. I presume that's the message that's going to be sent to Milei.
100%, I agree. And I also agree with backing Argentina to try to keep from doing all their dirty work down in South America. I'm behind that idea altogether, because in our business it's been happening for 10 to 15, maybe even longer years, and we can see what they've been up to. So if we can stall or try to, and that's also what he's probably going around Asia right now, trying to do deals with everybody around China as well. So he needs to start playing a little bit of a stratego, if you know what I mean.
Yeah. Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about inflation, because, the burgeoning consensus is that that 2% target the Fed had for the last couple of years is not something they're actually that particularly interested in, and get used to 3%. And that doesn't sound like a lot, but 3% inflation year over year means that unless you're getting a 3%, even if you're getting a sort of a 3% COLA bump in your take home pay every year, all you're doing is holding serve. You're not getting ahead. And most people aren't, unless you're a member of the teachers union, are not seeing necessarily wage increases at that rate.
Yeah, you're exactly right, and I think they're going to let inflation run hotter than that. I mean, inflation month over month is still getting hotter. I don't care what anybody says. And if the market celebrates what they quote unquote say is a benign inflation report, because it comes in at or maybe a little bit lower than they were expecting, but the expectations were higher than last month's. If you go back the last 4 or 5 months, that's absolutely been the case. That's my first point. And my second point is that given the chance to let the economy run a little hot versus run a little cool, the Fed will always err on they'll always err on the side of letting inflation go a little bit, because they feel like they've got way more tools to handle inflation than they do deflation, because deflation is a psychological issue, is not as much as a fiscal issue. And number three is, we went through $37 trillion in our national debt in August, and we went through $38 trillion last week. I mean, that's an historically fast pace to go through $1 trillion. We have a debt problem, and we're going to have to inflate our way out. And then you inflate your way out by letting inflation go. So I think we're looking at 3 to 3.5 here, and that's going to be the case. And maybe, God forbid, we get a little bit more than that. But the Fed, this 2% target, nobody knows where it came from. It's kind of like this, the social distancing and 6-foot rule. Nobody knows where that came from either. So 2% is just a pipe dream. That's not going to happen. We're going to have to live with 3 to 3.5. And by the way, the market, the stock market, your 401k can handle that. I think we had 3% inflation on average over the through the 90s. But it's just going to be something that's going to be here to stay. And I think that the Fed's going to have to come out at some point in time and just give up the ghost and say we're going to try to keep it closer to 3 than anything else.
Right. I mean, that it's like the markets only, something Jim Murio, our friend Jim Murio, he says, like, the markets only hate inflation if they believe the Fed is going to fight it.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Exactly
If the Fed is going to lay down, then they're fine with it.
Yes. And so, it's... I've said for a long time, and the market would love it if they said 3% is their new target, by the way. I think that the Fed's going to have to give up that 2% pipe dream. It's not going to, I mean, remember, it was only about 6 or 7 years ago we were begging for inflation. We were at 1.5, 1.4, looking for something, to get us up to 2%. But now with this cat out of the bag and the amount of money that the government spent, our debts and deficits, the dollar debasement trade, nobody trusts us anymore. I mean, it's an absolute cluster, if you know what I mean. And so I don't think we're going to be able to put that genie back in the bottle anytime soon.
Okay, so I mean, just to play this out, so like what you said, that we need to inflate our way out of the debt to some extent to keep the plate spinning. It needs to be run at 2.8, 3%, something like that. So what are the potential downsides to doing that? What if the calibrations are just a little bit off?
It's because that when inflation gets out of control very fast. That's the problem. And so, they don't want to have, and that also drives a wedge between the rich and the poor. The rich always benefit from inflation, or they benefit both ways, by the way, and the poor do not. And we've seen that. I mean, look, we can't lose our middle class. I think that's the biggest risk, man. If we lose the middle class, the whole thing falls in on itself, and we really don't have an economy. I know that's a little bit hyperbolic, but you need to make sure that the middle class is healthy. And the middle class doesn't have a ton of equities ownership, and they don't have a ton of real estate ownership, which means basically they've missed out on what this inflationary environment's done over the last 6 years. So they haven't really they haven't gotten further, and arguably they've gotten behind because of inflation.
Well,
we need to make sure. Go ahead.
No, I mean, I would just want to sort of back up that point about losing the middle of your economy. So that's largely what's happened in big city America. I mean, the greatest income disparity in one city is San Francisco. With despite all of their progressive bon mots, and Chicago and New York, and when you talk about livability, you're talking about people that are doing okay. They're gainfully employed. They're playing by the rules. They're making, certainly in New York, they're making six figures, but they're falling behind if they're not making mid six figures. And so what you've seen is people insulated from terrible public policy because of their wealth, and people are the beneficiaries of transfer payments and not much in between. And if you want if you want to scale that, if you want to look at what a microcosm of that presents, then look at San Francisco, New York, Chicago, and then scale that nationally. And what do you got?
Right. You've got a bunch of people at the top that are benefiting from the policies, and 70% of the people below that are not benefiting at all and actually are falling behind. And you fall in on yourself because we need the middle class, because the people in the middle class, they do stuff. They build stuff. They're the backbone of America. And if we don't have that, we can't have everybody on welfare and everybody be rich at the same time. It's just that it doesn't work out.
Speaking of New York, Mamdani, I saw some survey. 1 in 4 New Yorkers will consider moving out if Mamdani wins. I mean, that's probably a bit inflated, to borrow a word, but I'm sure those with real mobility and maybe not ties to New York City the way they once did will certainly change their residency, even if they keep a pied a terre there. But one of the other questions, this is something Steve Moore has been predicting ever since the threat of a Mamdani mayoralty became real, that Wall Street will move. What is effectively, quote unquote, Wall Street will wind up in Charlotte or Austin or somewhere. Do you agree with that prediction? And even if it did come to pass, does it matter?
Yes, I agree with the prediction. I'm not sure about whether or not, how much it matters. I mean, it just goes to show you, I think it goes to show you that the political leaders have absolutely no business acumen at all whatsoever. And I can stretch that from both New York into Chicago. I mean, they don't understand that these exchanges, technically speaking, are a bunch of servers in a closet, probably outside of New York and outside of Chicago. I know they're outside of Chicago and Aurora. And so what they don't understand is that server room can be put on one truck and moved anywhere. And we've already got exchanges. MIAX, the MIAX, that's opened up in Miami. We've seen another stock exchange opening up now in Texas. And then to think that they can somehow tax these people or rely on some sort of financial tax it's asinine. They have no idea about any business, because they will pick up, and they literally could move the New York Stock Exchange, I believe, over a weekend, right? And how about the $21 a head tax that your mayor in Chicago? I mean, they're just not going to have anybody in Chicago. That's great. I mean, I can't believe that they're that ignorant, that they don't understand business well enough to think that is not going to fly at all whatsoever. It's because they don't understand technology and how these things are working anymore. They really don't. They think that people have to go into the office. It's so dumb. I can't believe it. So, yeah, we already have exchanges moving. We have exchanges popping up in Miami and in Texas. Like I said, I think you could move the CME in Chicago and the New York Stock Exchange, from Friday night to Monday morning open into another city, no problem.
I see what you did there. Oh, our mayor. Okay, Glen Ellen boy. Now he's our mayor. Now he's not your problem anymore. Okay, I see what you did there. All right. Go ahead.
I was also going to say, another interesting. You could probably do another segment on this. I don't need to do it right now, but for the last, 35, 40 years of my career, Dan, I've been going to cocktail parties all over the world, Asia, Europe, and America, trying to make sure that people knew that our futures and options business, our stock exchanges, our bond business, there was an important economic function that was taking place on those floors and on those screens all over the world. We were setting the price for interest rates and food and everything else. And now we've got the CME Group getting in bed with FanDuel. We've got the New York Stock Exchange getting in bed with the predictive market, Poly Market. And now Kalshi has done a big deal with the NHL. I don't know what's going on, but speculation fever is starting to grip our businesses, and now it's moving into legacy exchanges, and I don't like it at all, one bit.
Well, and you don't like it because?
Because they're getting in bed. They're getting in the gambling bed because they see 150 billion gambled every year legally. And that's just legally in the U.S. and that's up 24% from 2023. I mean, they're going to. At the CME Group, you're going to be allowed to bet on the non-farm jobs payroll number as well as sports. I mean, to me, that's just that's a slippery slope. That's all. Maybe I'm a little bit of an old fuddy-duddy, but I think that's a slippery slope.
Yeah, no, it's a good point that you raised. Very interesting. And with respect to the markets, too, I mean, just because the nature of us talking even 10 years ago about the prospect of the exchanges pulling up stakes and moving to another state or even another country when things like the teachers' unions were proposing their LaSalle Street tax and stuff. It's a little bit different now technologically, and I just wonder what the domino effect would be. Do you still see the exchanges pulling out of Chicago or Wall Street, effectively the New York Stock Exchange pulling out of New York? I mean, do the insurance businesses and accounting firms and law firms that located around those financial centers go with them, or is it not as linked as it once was?
I don't know. I don't think they go with that. Well, I think maybe a little bit with them, but I mean, I still talk to people in Chicago, LaSalle, and Jackson, and because of that exchange going even just electronic, not even having a floor, has been devastating to the local businesses and restaurants and
for sure.
The little guy selling flour. I mean, so just the fact that we've changed the modus operandi of actually getting the business done has hurt the Loop in Chicago badly. Now you just take all those jobs of anybody that's even the legacy jobs that are still left behind and move them to another city. It'll be, and yes, insurance is going to get hurt. There's other, all the lawyers that are involved in those exchanges and the regulations and the SEC and the CFTC and the likes. I mean, these government leaders that think that these businesses can't get up and move, with a light switch are crazy. And it's already starting to hurt. I mean, Chicago's Loop is a ghost town compared to what it was before COVID and before those floors all closed. It's an absolute ghost town, and I know people that own businesses that have been absolutely decimated, and some of them had to leave. So it's not going to be any stretch of the imagination to think that they could go south to Miami or Texas or Tennessee or wherever, because, again, the technology will allow them to do that in a flip of a light switch.
Scott the Cow Guy Shellady, market specialist for Market Day Report, 10:30 to 1. Also hosts of the Cow Guy Close, 1 to 1:30, both at RFD-TV. Scott the Cow Guy, thanks as always.
All right, brother. Have a great week.
You too. And Scott joined us on the Turnkey.pro answer line.
It's news, opinion, insight. This is Chicago's Morning Answer on AM 560. The Answer.
I can't believe how much better Dad's doing since we brought on Senior Helpers of Naperville, South